Want to go through the board and the public, just some highlights. We're not going to get into the nitty gritty, but the Board of Education members have the reference of the code of conduct. There's copies available for the public, and then there's also been a review period online. So any comments that come up, really why we do this is because the Board of Education is committed to creating and providing a safe and supportive school environment where students receive and district personnel may deliver quality educational services without disruption or interference. Responsible and respectful behavior by students, teachers, and other district personnel, parents, and other visitors is essential to achieving this goal. So I just really want to start with that and emphasize that we really do have the belief system that a orderly and structured environment is best for all. I'm going to go through our strategic action plan. As you know, our mission and vision drive everything that we do here at North Rose-Wolcott. Specifically, I just want to talk about creating a community of belonging and a mindset of continuous learning by building collaborative relationships. I really believe the code of conduct reflects that, because this district has a long-standing set of requirements for code of conduct and how to behave on school property. And these requirements are based on the principles of civility, mutual respect, citizenship, character, tolerance, honesty, and integrity. And really the environment should be free from discrimination and harassment, as well as foster civility. The code of conduct is the overarching umbrella that highlights what students can be disciplined for and the conduct that is expected both on campus as well as off campus when they're partaking in school-related activities. So disruptive student is defined as an elementary or secondary student who substantially interrupts the education process and interferes with a teacher's classroom authority. In the past, that's been something that, constant interruptions, constant harassment, insubordination, things of that nature really would qualify as a disruptive student. Absenteeism has been a big push for the Board of Education and for the administrators here, combating that and making sure that our students are engaged with school, making sure that they're here to receive a high quality education and to minimize the distractions and interruption to the learning of their peers when they come back from being absent. Cyberbullying is a big one, probably over the last several years with the invention of a smartphone, social media, and things of that nature. This is something that I would say keeps us quite busy. The cyberbullying, the use of social media, but really, as it's defined here in front of you, it includes but not limited to misuses of technology, harassment, teasing, intimidating, threatening or terrorizing other students or staff members by way of any technological tool, such as posting or sending inappropriate or derogatory email messages, instant messages, text messages, pictures or other images, or even website postings. The cyberbullying can involve, but is not limited to, sending mean, vulgar, threatening messages or posting sensitive and private information about another person, or one that we've noticed recently. You'll recall last school year where we had the social media issue where people were pretending to be someone else from a local district, and that went out across the Northeast, is really presenting as a potential cyberbullying harassment type issue that really had schools on alert at the beginning of the year. And oftentimes this can happen on campus as well as off campus, and students are just reminded any district owned internet device, any access to our Wi-Fi or any of that can be reason to hold them accountable for their actions. This one's the big one, the internet-enabled devices. This really is a large portion of our changes to the code of conduct, and I've kind of highlighted for people that it's not just one device, it's all internet-enabled personal devices. So whether it's a smartphone, a smartwatch, a tablet, a Chromebook, a laptop, anything that's owned by a person, not possession of the school district or owned by the school district rather, that has internet capabilities is not allowed during the academic day. And we'll talk a little bit more about that with the respect to the cell phone as it relates to the consequences as well. Hazing is another one that unfortunately we have to bring up when it comes down to student behavior and interacting with each other. It's not related solely to athletic teams anymore, unfortunately. It could be older group of students targeting a younger group of students. It could be a particular group that's targeting someone based on socioeconomic status, could be based on ethnicity or any of those things. That's one I just wanted to make sure that the board and the community are aware of, that we're taking a very close look at that and watching those behaviors. And then restorative practices. You'll recall that we've done a lot of work over the last 5 years to implement restorative practices. And really, that's not saying we don't hold kids accountable with consequences. What we're saying is that we really try to repair the relationship at the infancy and make sure that anytime a student or a staff member or two students get into it, that we work on really trying to repair the relationship at the lowest possible level. That is one of the restorative practices, one of our interventions. Some of the other interventions that we talk about are conferencing protocols, skill building with social emotional learning, individual and group counseling activities, and then really focusing in on how to correct some of those poor tendencies and bad behaviors. And I think you'll see from our data that we've reduced the number of referrals based on our approach to restorative practices and the use of these multiple interventions. When it comes down to assigning consequences, there's a range. We often tell people it's like a ladder of consequences. Just want to go through a couple of the quick options. You know, sometimes just a warning or a quick correction at the first level. So on option one, really is all it takes to restore some positive interactions in a classroom. Number two, options two could be anything from removal from class to suspension from transportation, athletics, or other activities. In the worst case scenario, there could be in-school suspension or a short-term suspension. And then option three is really long-term suspension or permanent suspension. And that happens sometimes when we get into behaviors that warrant a consequence or an exclusion from something for 5 days or greater at option three. DASA, you know, every year we go through our required DASA training. The school administrator, so whether it's elementary, middle, or high school administrator, is typically the person that's responsible for receiving all threats with respect to harassment. They are the person responsible to make sure that all the complaints get investigated thoroughly, whether it's verbally or written. But there is a process where each of the buildings has a primary person and a secondary person, and then our assistant superintendent is the district coordinator for all of those investigations. And not every type of bullying falls under DASA. There are times where, again, going back to our previous slides, where an intervention could simply be a restorative conversation and it can get documented, but it doesn't warrant a full-blown DASA investigation. But you could see at the primary or at the elementary level rather, Ben Stopka, the assistant principal, and John Bittner, the elementary counselor, are our DASA coordinators. At the middle school, it's Joe Canori and Mary Finn. And at the high school, it's Lisa Visali and Laura Purcell. And then again, Megan is the district coordinator. And in certain cases, because she is a compliance officer and Fred is also a compliance officer, the two of them may tag team certain things. And then just important to remind the board and the community, we want our conversations to start at the lowest possible level. And we encourage people to take their concerns to the classroom teacher first and work through a specific protocol where they would work with the classroom teacher, then take it to the building or department leader, then the assistant superintendent, then myself, and then lastly would be the Board of Education. And if we can't resolve our issues through that, certainly people can appeal to the Commissioner of Education if they don't like the decision that the Board of Education makes. But that's in every handbook, that's on our website, and then the communication protocol is spelled out. So in summary, our edits to the Code of Conduct this year reflect the feedback we received last year. It continues to provide us with an operating standard and keeps our district compliant. The consistent implementation across our pre-K through 12 campuses is vital, and our approach to restorative practices have been very effective. So that's for our Code of Conduct. Now, are there any questions as it relates specifically to the Code of Conduct? Not hearing any. I know this next piece is something that was often referenced in the past. So I just want to take a couple minutes to highlight to you that we do actually have an athletic code of conduct and an extracurricular activities handbook. They follow the umbrella from our code of conduct, but usually when parents sign their children up for sports and family ID, they actually have to sign off that they've read the athletic code of conduct and they agree to abide by it. So I've just included the table of contents to show you the range that again starts with our mission and vision and then talks about our interscholastic athletic program for fall, winter, and spring. And then it references the NISVA standard, Section 5 standard, the Wayne County Public Schools Athletic Association, and then the Finger Lakes thing. And then also the clubs that have to abide by that same extracurricular handbook. And I think that that's something where, again, you all know from your experience as board members, you know, we do want our students involved in as much as they possibly can be, but we also want to make sure that they're in good standing academically. So the academic eligibility is called out in there, and then we reference that we're checking eligibility every 5 weeks. And then here are some of the other expectations with respect to academic eligibility, after school suspension or supervision rather, and then athletic and club attendance requirement. And then again, behavioral and citizenship standards, and then the DASA process under athletics as well. There are times where athletically and academically a DASA investigation's running simultaneously. And again, you saw the coordinators under the code of conduct review, but there are a lot of times where people are running information up to Megan, and then we kind of decide, are we running these things parallel or are we combining them into one, and we'll investigate simultaneously. But again, same thing as before, some of the key components that we see through athletics, the cyberbullying, the harassment, physical bullying, sexual bullying, the verbal bullying, and then hazing, and then the reporting process for what it is. And then when students are given consequences, there's the appeal process and what that looks like. And then here's some things with respect to how we want to handle equipment, uniforms, hazing, injuries, phys ed class, practices meeting, what we expect if you're going to actually quit a team and what the protocol would look like there, and then the registration, and then the responsibilities for a North Rose-Wolcott student. And then it talks about responsibility to yourself, to your school, to others, and then really just, again, discipline with it when it comes down to your role as a student athlete, the sportsmanship we expect out on the field or on the court, and then really what it means to be a spectator here, which I think has been something across the state they're really looking at more and more because of the number of incidents that have occurred at athletic events. And then there's your the specificity around physicals and transportation. And in talking with Mark, he will go over the big ticket items when it comes to meet the coaches night. He does not go through each line. He just anticipates, because they've signed up through Family ID, families and student athletes have conversed about this, but he does talk to the parents about the protocols. He does talk about the violations. And then one that I think in the last probably decade that we've dealt with a lot more as administrators is substance use and abuse, with the rise in popularity for e-cigarettes, vape pens, and then access to THC and gummies. But we also know that part of our work is to, provide a therapeutic approach too, that we don't just consequence people out of their shoes, that we think about the whole child, the whole person, and really work at trying to remediate some of those behaviors. And again, there's the specificity of what that looks like with respect to the violations, and then the appeals committee, and the reporting of violations, and then also the component programs that we offer: modified, JV, varsity, and then lastly, our athletic code of conduct and our extracurricular activities code of conduct just highlights some of the end of the year awards that we recognize our student athletes with. And I provide that to you because Mark updated that a couple years ago, and I know that we probably haven't really gone into great discussion about this, but I wanted to share it with you because I know, again, in the past people have questioned whether we actually had this, and we've said yes. So I just figured tonight I'd take the liberty to provide you with that. Questions, comments, or anything else? Anything from the audience? Mr. de Blasi? All right, so it's going to bring our public hearing to a close.